Hello, this is Cynthia Campbell, and I'm starting a new feature called Looking Towards Sunday, an opportunity to think with you for a few moments each week about the biblical passages that we'll be looking at on Sunday morning during worship. Someone once compared writing sermons to the process of film editing and said that one of the things that any preacher needs to do is leave a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. That is to say, you always have more ideas and more information and more perspectives than ever make it into a sermon. And this morning, I want to think just for a few minutes about the main characters in the gospel reading for this Sunday. So our gospel is John 11. A very long chapter, a very long story. It's the last of these four big stories that occur in the Lenten lectionary in this particular year. It's the very famous story of the raising of Lazarus. But it's an interesting story about a family, Martha and her sister Mary and their brother Lazarus. According to John, they live in Bethany, a small village not very far from Jerusalem. It feels in this gospel as though their home is Jesus' home base when he is in Jerusalem. These people are friends of Jesus, not only disciples. They're clearly part of a tight inner circle. Although they figure very prominently really only here. We know a mention of Mary and Martha from Luke's gospel, of course, as the sisters who welcomed him into their home for dinner. Here there's this larger picture of them with Lazarus. So the setup of the story, of course, is that Lazarus is sick, and then Lazarus dies. Jesus arrives in Bethany after Lazarus's death. And Martha, hearing that he has come into the village, leaves the home where she and her sister are sitting in traditional mourning for their brother. She leaves and she walks out to meet Jesus and says, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." How often do we think that or say that? If only. If only things had been different, if only God might have intervened, if only something might have changed, this disaster would not have happened. It's a poignant cry. Jesus answers that with what at first seems like a non sequitur. He says, "Your brother will rise at the end, at the resurrection." And Martha replies, "Yes, Lord, I know that at the end time he will rise." So they're moving through this notion of resurrection, a view which was coming to be common among the Jewish religious life at the time of Jesus. Some believed in a general resurrection, others did not. Martha clearly does. Martha is a believer. Sensing this, Jesus then says, "I am the resurrection and the life." Do you believe this? What follows is Martha's confession of faith. "Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." This is a powerful and incredible and the most fulsome confession that anyone makes in this gospel of Jesus' true identity. He is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who is coming, the one who is arriving into this world to change everything. This is what Martha believes. Interestingly, in the other Gospels, this notion of a confession of Jesus' true identity is put on the lips of Peter. In the famous story where Jesus says to the disciples, "Well, who do people say that I am, and who do you say that I am?" Peter is the one who blurts out, "You are the Christ, the Messiah." In Matthew's gospel, of course, Jesus follows this by saying, Peter, you are the rock, and on you I will build my church. Hence, the Pope is known as the successor to Peter. John's gospel has a different tradition. Here, the person of deep faith is Martha. Martha is the one who comes to this central understanding. So, how do we make our confession? Who do we say that Jesus is? How do we grow in our apprehension of that, in our understanding of his identity? Changes over time. We grow into faith. The other main character in this story, of course, is Lazarus. Lazarus doesn't say anything in this story. He is sick off stage. He dies. By the time Jesus arrives, his body is in the tomb. And then at the end of the story, he emerges. Lazarus is at the center of the crisis of the story, but we know very little about him. What happens to Lazarus is what's important. Jesus calls him out of darkness, out of the darkness of the tomb into the light. Jesus calls him from death to life. Jesus' voice is heard by Lazarus, just as the Good Shepherd speaks and the sheep know his voice, just as Jesus speaks to Mary Magdalene in the garden after his resurrection. They respond to his voice. And then a fascinating thing, Jesus says to the company, the community around, unbind him, let him go. The community needs to take off all the wrappings, the grave clothes, the bindings that the body has been wrapped in when it was placed in the tomb. Others have to come and set him free. In our own lives, I wonder what your story might be. Is there a time when you've been called out of darkness into light? What's your story about how that transformed you? When have you felt bound by fear or anxiety or pain or hopelessness or running out of options? And someone has come and helped unbind you from those fears and turn you loose. There are two interesting legends about what happened to Lazarus after he was returned to life. The Eastern tradition of Christianity, the Orthodox churches of the East, have a tradition that Lazarus was commissioned by Paul and Barnabas to become a missionary to India. The Western Christian tradition, the Greek and the Latin and Roman Church, holds that Lazarus was commissioned to become the Bishop of Marseille in France, at the time a Roman colony. They're both legends, of course, kind of a midrash on the story. We know nothing about Lazarus from the Bible. But it raises an interesting question. When we've been given a second chance, what do we do with it? When our life has looked like it had come to a dead end and we've gotten to start over, how will we use the second life that we get? Reflect on this story in John 11. Think about these characters. Imagine yourself into them. And bring that with you Sunday morning. When we imagine ourselves hearing one say to us, I am the resurrection and the life. This is our promise and our hope. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. I also want to let you know that on our website, we are going to have a place where you can send in prayer concerns. And we will be looking to those and using those as we write prayers of the people on Sunday mornings. If you would like a prayer concern to be shared, or a prayer concern just to be addressed to the church staff, please use that opportunity on our website. May God hold you close. May God bless us all.